Well, hi there everyone and welcome to UPR update number 8. It's a special edition of the UPR updates. We obviously, if you're following back in Geneva, we provided, I think it was 7 updates basically on Australia's UPR appearance, NGO engagement with that, but we're back here in Australia. We've obviously been focusing recently on speaking with the government about its response to the recommendations, and we thought who better than to give us a bit of an update about what the government's actually doing than the Attorney himself. So I'll hand over to the Attorney, thank him for coming to speak with us and hear from him a little bit about what the Australian government's doing.
Yeah, well, sure. Thank you. The Australian government appeared before the United Nations Human Rights Council on the 27th of January for its first Universal Periodic Review. Our delegation was led at the time by Senator Kate Lundy, who is the Parliamentary Secretary to the Prime Minister. Unfortunately, as a result of floods in Queensland at that time, I was unable to personally attend. But during the interactive dialogue that occurred during the course of the presentation, we received 145 recommendations from 53 countries, and we're now in the process of developing our report back to the Council. As part of that process, we are consulting with the states and territories and non-government organisations. On the 2nd of March, I tabled in Parliament a draft report of the UPR working group, that is the international body. I tabled that report in the House of Representatives, as I say, on the 2nd of March, and Senator Kate Lundy tabled the same document in the Senate on the 3rd of March, going through the summary of the UPR committee at that stage. The process that is occurring now is that I'm keeping my parliamentary colleagues across the political spectrum informed of the process. I've also advised relevant cabinet colleagues. As part of our voluntary commitments that were made during the course of the UPR process, we committed to placing on the Attorney General's website those recommendations that have been made, at least in draft form to date, and we have also committed to tabling and placing on that website any recommendations from international bodies that are made in respect to Australia's international obligations. So this is a good mechanism through which members of the public can see our engagement with the international community. As part of the response that we're developing to the United Nations Human Rights Council for our June response, we are continuing with this public consultation process, specifically with non-government organisations who have made a very significant contribution to the whole process, putting in their submissions to our government submission on their view of those areas where the Australian government was satisfying to a reasonable standard our human rights obligations, and to be frank, those areas where we could do better. Now, in terms of our response to the recommendations arising from the United Nations Human Rights Council, clearly again the views of non-government organisations and indeed the general public will be of significant interest to us, as indeed will be our discussions with states and territories insofar as Australia's compliance with the recommendations will obviously involve in many cases cooperations with the states and territories. But the process is well and truly underway. In many ways it is a new process, so we are developing these methods of consultation and processes of consultation as we go, but the engagement, particularly from the non-government sector, has been outstanding, and I'm satisfied that when we do respond, that we will be in a position as a country to accept or comply with the great majority of those recommendations, but it's something that we're working through in the coming months, and I would certainly welcome the input of not only non-government organisations but also the general public in this process. Thanks.
Well, thanks very much, Attorney, for that update, and perhaps if I could just take this opportunity while we have you here as well to, on behalf of NGOs, if I can speak on behalf of all NGOs, but to thank you for your personal involvement and the involvement of your department in leading Australia's UPR appearance. I think certainly it was commented on in Geneva, and I think we've spoken previously on the updates about the way in which Australia's engagement with the UPR process was certainly appreciated and acknowledged internationally. So thank you for that, and we're looking forward to continuing the relationship with NGOs back home and with you, and as we look to, as you say, accept hopefully and implement the recommendations. So thanks very much, and thanks for your time today.
My pleasure.